Yo, what's good? I'm Marcus, the Debt Free Dad, where we're talking finances and attorney reactions. And this video is going to be a reaction that normally get mixed comments. I either get comments saying I'm a Trump fanboy, or in the alternative, I get comments saying that I'm a Biden fanboy, which is kind of hilarious in and of itself. But we're going to talk about Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump, and his hush money trial. The jury is, hey, they're going to be deliberating starting tomorrow or today when you see this actual video. And so I'm going to give my take, a little bit of background on how I think that this trial is going to play out. Before I get started, I always have to give a disclaimer. I'm a licensed attorney. I am licensed. I had to check, make sure I wasn't struggle streaming today. But I'm licensed in multiple jurisdictions. None of those jurisdictions amount to me being your counsel. So if you're looking for legal or financial advice, seek a professional in your local area. And if you see something that you like, definitely support the channel. I'm not selling nobody anything, but you can like, share, subscribe, comment, hit the bell notification so you can get updated on new videos. And if you go to the About page, you can see my TikTok and my IG and all that other good stuff. So, first things first, we're going to talk about, hey, this is the actual first instance in the history of the United States where a former president is actually on criminal trial. Donald Trump has a myriad of legal issues. Now, hey, some people say these things are politically motivated. Some say they're just based on the facts and circumstances of his actions. I personally think it falls somewhere in the middle. I think two things could be true. I think that, hey, these prosecutions are based on the conduct or his particular actions, but there is a little bit of a political nuance, just in my personal opinion. Hey, the facts have been out there forever. If a hush money trial was going to occur, this trial should have occurred a long ass time ago. I personally think, in my personal opinion, that trying President Trump for criminal matters wasn't a big deal until he got a little bit of steam on the reelection side of the game. That's my personal opinion, but it is what it is. But we're going to outline the facts. I actually found a good article that I looked at that broke down the hush money case, what the actual charges are, because generally hush money payments aren't criminal in nature, but because those payments were made to avoid any bad news getting out prior to the 2016 election that could impact it one way or another. And there are allegedly false financial documents that were made and filed to cover up these payments. Now it just snowballed into a big criminal to do. So let's go ahead, dive in the article so we can get a summary. We're going to watch a quick video about the closing arguments, and I'm going to give you all my take on how this is going to play out. I don't know what my record is as far as predicting trials. I think really the only one that I did was the Elon Musk fraud trial, which clearly was going to be a not guilty. Ray Charles could have saw that that was a not guilty. But let's go ahead, take a look at the article so we can dive in and get a breakdown of what is going on in this case. All right, Donald Trump hush money trial explained. What's the general outline of the hush money case? Two women who said they had an affair with Trump years before he ran for president were paid six-figure sums in a month before the 2016 election. Because he was running for office, like I said, that's part of what makes it problematic. The first woman, Karen McDougal, a Playboy model, was paid $150,000 by the National Enquirer parent company, American Media Inc., for the rights to her story. AMI promptly did nothing with the story in a process known as catch and kill. Hey, you pay for the story, but the story is about somebody who you may or may not have a vested interest in supporting. So you're like, you know what, we're going to pay for this story and not do anything with it. She got her bag, go away. Let's keep it moving, keep it pushing. All right. AMI also paid to catch and kill a former Trump Tower doorman story, alleging that he had an unacknowledged child, but the allegation was never corroborated by any reports. Trump friend David Pecker, who was the CEO of AMI, okayed the payments. All right, so you got a lot of money going on out here. People giving up the bag. It's purportedly for hush money to avoid any problems prior to the 2016 election. The second woman who was born, Stephanie Clifford, but built a career in adult film industry, Stormy Daniels, was paid $130,000 by Trump's former fixer, Michael Cohen. Okay, hey. Michael Cohen is interesting because he actually served time in prison for conduct related to these same facts. But Michael Cohen, in my opinion, isn't the most trustworthy of actors. I think anybody would agree with that. I don't give a damn what side of the coin you fall on. All right. To sign a non-disclosure agreement about her encounter with Trump, Cohen obtained a line of credit on his home to make payments just before the election. Trump's campaign was particularly worried about allegations of sexual impropriety in the final days of the 2016 election, as the release of the Access Hollywood tape, in which Trump described grabbing women by the you know what dominated news coverage. After the election, Trump company paid Cohen back for the payments to Daniels. How did these payments and the alleged affair come to light? The Wall Street Journal actually on the AMI catch and kill scheme, and that Daniels had been in talks to share her story days before the election in 2016. McDougal and Daniels shared the same lawyer, but things did not really blow up until January of 2018 when a journal reported on payments Cohen made to Daniels. Were these hush money payments illegal? Yes, while hush money payments is not necessarily illegal, Cohen and AMI both have admitted they broke the law by making these payments in an effort to hide unflattering information before the 2016 election. Because of the election nexus to him and his status as a candidate, now you talk about illegal campaign contributions because, and illegal spending from campaigns, all because this spending was done in an effort to protect what they would call the integrity of their candidate during their campaign. Cohen pled guilty to 2 counts of campaign finance charges in August of 2018, causing an unlawful campaign contribution for his involvement orchestrating the payment from AMI to McDougal and making excessive campaign contributions for the payment to Daniels. Exactly what I said. We talked about. Interestingly enough, if y'all aren't aware, during the Cohen trial, uh, Trump was actually named in several instances in that trial, not by actual name, but they would say something to the effect of party number one or individual number one. But it was clearly obvious, if anybody who knew the facts of the case, that person number one, party number one, was referring to President Trump. All right, let's go back and get back into this article so we can keep it pushing. Okay, what? Hold on. Cohen pled guilty. Blah blah blah. AMI, now known as A360 Media, was not criminally charged by authorities, but did admit to making payments to McDougal. The company paid $187,000 fine to the Federal Election Commission for making an unlawful campaign contribution. What did Trump know about these payments? Okay, here is where things get a little bit interesting and where we start to see the original findings of Michael Cohen and his sleaziness. Outside of the facts, whether it was done or not, because I'm going to give my take on if there's enough evidence here to actually convict him of what he's being charged with. But this goes to me personally thinking Michael Cohen is a sleazebag, and I think everybody would think that. Cohen recorded at least one conversation with Trump that appears to be about the payments to Daniels, in which they are heard discussing whether to make the payment in cash. Cohen also testified to the grand jury that indicted Trump in 2018. Trump initially denied any knowledge of the payments, but he later admitted in a carefully worded tweet that he made them to Cohen. Trump argued they had nothing to do with the campaign. What law is Trump accused of breaking? Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg announced Trump's indictment by a grand jury in April of 2023. They did this too late. They should have, if they were going to indict this. I mean, I would just be honest. I kind of understand where Trump supporters are coming from because y'all had these facts forever. This. I'm gonna just be honest. Y'all had these facts forever. The fact that y'all held everything off until 2023, it just gives the specter of looking politically motivated. If y'all had the damn facts, y'all should have moved forward as soon as y'all had sufficient facts to support the indictment that y'all wanted to file or that y'all got. That's my personal opinion. So I do kind of feel where Trump supporters are coming from. Like, yo, bro, y'all making it look real politically motivated with the timing of everything. I do think that in fact is a valid position for a person. What law is Trump accused of breaking? Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg announced Trump's indictment by grand jury in April of 2023, accusing the former president of falsifying New York business records in order to conceal damaging information and unlawful activity from American voters before and after the 2016 election. Technically, Trump is charged with 34 counts of falsifying business records, a Class E felony. A Class E felony is like the lowest of the low felony. When you have felonies, a high level felony is a B, a C, depending on what state you're in. Low level felonies are lower down in the alphabets. A charge like this is literally could be a maximum. It could be potential prison time. More likely than that, it would be some type of suspended sentence for probation because it's a low level felony. Technically, Trump is charged with 34 counts of falsifying business records, a Class E felony. Trump was charged with the felony because prosecutors accused him of falsifying business records with the intent to commit or conceal another crime connected to his 2016 campaign. This is the least serious type of felony in New York. Exactly what I said, which means if Trump is found guilty, the judge could sentence him to probation or a maximum sentence of up to 4 years in state prison on each count. No way in hell. I don't care, Republican, Democrat, Independent. I don't care what their political affiliation is. If Trump is convicted, which I have my speculations on. I don't think that's going to happen personally. But if he is convicted, there's no way any judge is going to give him any jail time for this, no prison time for this. I just don't see it happening. That's my personal opinion. It is what it is. There's a lot more to this, but do we want to read it? Almost, I guess. This is a long sword tale, and what's in the refresher really just scratches the surface. It's almost beside the point of the payments, but there is some question over whether the alleged affairs occurred. Trump denied they happened, but both women who have very similar stories say they had sexual encounters with Trump in 2006. Both saw him at a golf tournament in Lake Tahoe. Both said that they visited him in a bungalow at the Beverly Hills Hotel. It took a very long time for this case to be built. Not that long. They just held on. It took a long time for them to decide to actually indict it and present it to a grand jury. Trump was not charged by a federal investigator who went after Cohen. It took years for the Manhattan DA to finally present the case to the grand jury. Now it could theoretically end up being one of only 4 criminal cases against Trump to go to trial before the November election, in which he is trying to reclaim the White House. If he reclaims the White House, this is just my commentary. If he reclaims the White House, I know one thing that won't happen. He definitely won't get no federal charges. If he reclaims the White House, is with 100% certainty that former President Trump will appoint, as is his right and as do all presidents, someone to run the Department of Justice, an attorney general, all of those good things. And with that, the attorney general, the federal prosecutors have discretion as to what they want to prosecute. And I can 100% guarantee that if Trump wins this election, there will be no federal prosecution, in my personal opinion. But I don't think most pundits would disagree with that point. Now, we got one more thing to go in because today was closing arguments. And these were the longest closing arguments that these are long ass closing arguments. Typically, as an attorney, one of the things you're taught early on when you're doing trial work is to the method of how you're supposed to present information to the jury. The opening statement, you tell them what they're going to see. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, in this case, is going to be a case dealing with self defense, the right to protect yourself, the right to bear arms, and the right to make sure that you can get back home to your family because you have an obligation and the right to be safe, protect yourself, so that you can provide for you. Give that entire speech. So you see how I did that? But you give that speech, you tell them what they're going to see. Then during trial, you give them the evidence. Then at closing argument, you tell them what they just saw. You kind of reiterate it and you make and nail home the five nuanced points of your argument. Normally, you keep that to 2 to 3 things, maybe 4 uh, nuanced points of your argument that you want the jury to kind of rest with. Because what I found in my experience, and I've had a gang of trials, hundreds of clients, when you're dealing with trial work, you can dive too deep to where you lose the jury. You don't want to lose the jury on a bunch of legal minutia. You don't want to lose the jury on a bunch of technical mumbo jumbo. So you want to keep things as simplistic as possible. You want to speak in plain language. You don't want to talk like someone who went to a Harvard or Yale or Princeton or Brown or anything like that. You want to make sure you give them a meal that's palatable, that's easy to digest, put a little bit of seasoning on it, and keep it moving, keep it pushing. No time for garnishments and all of the other BS. Now let's go ahead and cue up this video. It's going to be about a 5-minute video where they're breaking down some nuanced points of the closing arguments and the overall arguments of the case. Then I'm gonna dive in and let you all know how this is going to play out. I kind of gave y'all a hint early already on the front side of the game, but we're going to talk about it. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. Is Trump going to be found guilty? Is he going to be found not guilty? Is it going to be a hung jury? Y'all let me know what y'all think. All right, let's cue this up. That's funny. The still shot. Defense attacks Michael Cohen's credibility. I mean, this is patently obvious. I think anybody who had any general knowledge of who Michael Cohen was, a lot of things that he do looks disingenuous. The first thing that was a red flag for me was when he recorded the conversation of President Trump. There's typically, and laws vary by state. Some states are two-party states where you need the consent of both parties to record. Some states are one-party states where you only need the consent of one party to record. Generally, recording an individual is in very bad taste and is typically not respected professionally. Now, why would Michael Cohen record Donald Trump? There's really one big reason. There's a few, but they all revolve around this one big takeaway. The only reason that you actually record somebody is because you're trying to protect something. You're trying to protect your self interest. You're trying to protect a claim or a legal argument you may have by proving the fact that the person you're recording did something, said something. You're trying to protect yourself by getting leverage over an individual and threatening to release those audio records. So, generally, in the professional realms, recordings aren't something that's found relatively favorable, is found frowned upon. But you ask yourself, why would Michael Cohen record Trump? Well, Trump may have falsified something to him before, or more likely scenario, both of those things could be true. Trump could have falsified something to him before. Cohen wanted to cover his asset and protect himself and have some type of leverage and or insurance, whether he's dealing with Trump in the future, whether it was prosecutors, state, federal, whatever is the case. But the fact that this he's recording them, it kind of tilts towards the sleazeball method. And then we talk about him owning this role because it wasn't until the pressure fell on Michael Cohen that he decided to just get on his soapbox and stand on everything that the Trump organization was doing wrong. But for so many years, he wore the hat and embraced the hat of being Donald Trump's fixer. So if you're the fixer, you wore that hat as the fixer. That's kind of sleazeballish. Now you're sitting here just talking about like, yo, the Trump organization is wild. Let's just keep it a buck. That's kind of sleazeballish. Not saying I'm a Trump guy, not saying I'm a Biden guy. All I'm saying is Michael Cohen is a little bit sketch. And I think that anything that he says, if it were me looking at it, I'm going to look at it with a grain of salt, whether I was a Trump guy, a Biden guy, or an in between guy who just kind of neutral and impartial. So let's go ahead and cue this video up so we can dive into it. What's the best view we're going to do? We're going to do that view right there.
What do you make of the defense closing argument so far?
Well, I don't mean this as a criticism, but it's standard. I mean, we have two very good defense attorneys right here at this table, Jeremy and Duncan. I imagine either of them could walk down to the courthouse right now and give the same closing argument that Mr. Blanche is giving.
That is what we like to call in the legal world a legal bitch slap. Essentially, your closing argument is just generic, bro. Your closing argument is consistent with what a third-year law student would do if they were having a moot trial competition or a trial team competition. So, hey, that's kind of a low blow, but there are some advantages to having a closing argument that's kind of generic, because the key thing and the key takeaway, like I said earlier, is you want to keep things as simple as possible. The more complex you get, the more you start making a closing argument based on legal nuances and specific nuances in the facts. It could confuse people. These people have been in a courthouse probably 10 plus hours. I've had jurors deliberating where it goes after 6, 7. They like, we don't want to go home. We want to get it done. I had to run. I literally, the jurors deliberating, co-counsel was there. I left to go get my son, bring my son back, and the jury's still out. I'm going for like an hour. The judge was like, do your thing, counselor. So the jury has jury fatigue. It's a real thing. So I think there is some benefit from having a generic closing argument, because it could be beneficial when you have a lot of facts, when you have a lot of time, when you have a jury pool who may be experiencing jury fatigue.
You would proclaim that Mr. Trump is innocent. You would claim that Mr. Cohen is a creep and can't be trusted. And you would tell the jury that the government hasn't met its burden of proof. This is standard defense fare. Again, not a criticism, just an observation.
And the problem with what I think he's saying is that it is just belied by the evidence. You know, Michael Cohen, there's no retainer agreement. There were no invoices. Michael Cohen made $4 million in that year, 2017. He charged, I think he said he worked 10 hours for Mr. Trump while he was his personal assistant. He was really doing this so that he can grift on other clients. And so there's no evidence that he was actually billing any hours as Mr. Trump's personal attorney. And this number, $35,000, is not just a magic number pulled out of nowhere. There are two exhibits, Exhibit 35 and Exhibit 36 in this trial, which have.
That's the other thing that doesn't make any sense. Let's just pause this real quick, okay? Because one of the things that are at issue is Michael Cohen wasn't serving in the capacity as his technical attorney because they don't have any billing statements or invoices where he got billed from. I'm not saying that I'm always, hey, everybody, let's do the right thing out there. Let's not try to finesse the system. But as an attorney, if I'm an attorney and I'm representing somebody who could potentially be engaged in stuff that could be frowned upon, may have some potential criminal and or civil exposure, the very first thing that I want to do is have some type of attorney-client relationship established, have some type of retainer, because you actually insulate yourself and you insulate your client, because now you have a wall of attorney-client privilege that could afford you some protections, okay? There's some things and illegal act. There are some things and activities that could, in fact, breach attorney-client privilege, but I would never want to give up my right to assert attorney-client privilege. Assert attorney-client privilege, and then you leave it for the courts to argue if and determine if the information or the communication was in fact privileged. That's just another aspect of the litigation, but at least you build something to potentially have that wall there. Not saying that there aren't things that can breach attorney-client privilege, but if it were me, I would want to give myself that added layer of protection and give my client, more importantly, that added layer of protection.
Alan Weisselberg's handwriting all over it. And that is the calculation of how you get to the $35,000. It's not a magic number.
Jeremy, it's really the first building block of this process for the defense. But is that first building block pretty much standard?
It is pretty much standard, and I appreciate Chuck saying that we're good defense attorneys. Duncan, you're a very good defense attorney. But all joking aside, what I think they
That was a
did
corny
is a
ass
little
lawyer
bit
joke.
dangerous. It started off Blanche saying, we want or expect more than Michael Cohen. He's just opened that door for the prosecution to hammer him. And what I mean by that is, you know what? You deserve more than Michael Cohen. And guess what? You got more than Michael Cohen because you got Mr. Pecker. You got Hope Hicks. You've got, as you just said, the exhibits 35 and 36. Handwritten notes by Weisselberg. What else did you get? You have call logs. You have so much. This is not the Michael Cohen show, despite the fact that absolutely, unequivocally, that's the end game for the defense. If you don't like Michael Cohen, you don't want him to date your sister, you don't want him to.
All right, we're not about to listen to these goofballs or these respected counselors discuss the defense closing. Let's just get down to the nitty gritty. Okay. The first question is there sufficient evidence to actually warrant a conviction or to get a guilty verdict against President Trump? Now, I will tell y'all, I've had jury trials where there was actually video surveillance footage and my clients walked out of there with a not guilty. So when it comes to jurors, you never know how they're going to go, even if you think the evidence is, this evidence clearly proves innocence or guilt, you think is wrapped up in the bag, and the jury come back with some, you're like, what? How did y'all get that out of this evidence? So in my personal opinion, I think that, one, there is sufficient evidence that was presented, even if I remove sleazeball Michael Cohen out, because Michael Cohen just if you could presumably try this case without him, it would have been good, but he does add some value, even though he's hella disingenuous and is a snake. But I do think that there's sufficient evidence just with the exhibits, the testimony of all the other parties, the introduction of signed documents, the introductions of falsified business records to attempt to cover up the payment. I do think there's sufficient evidence to justify a guilty conviction. That being said, I don't think personally that President Trump will be found guilty. If he is, I would be shocked. I personally think that this is going to fall along the lines of, hey, a hung jury. I think that it may be 10-2. 10 people may say guilty, people may say not guilty. It's just going to be difficult considering the jurors, consider the juror pool. Let's just think about this from a commonsensical standpoint, okay? The nation is pretty much split half and half, I think. Like, for the most part, you got half of the nation who rock with President Trump. You got the other half who doesn't rock with President Trump. I just think that it's impossible. I think it's impossible to find a juror of 12 persons, a juror of persons that doesn't include one person who is someone who vigorously supports Donald Trump. I'm talking about they contributing to their campaign. They got the MAGA hats and the whole nine. They believe everything that Trump says. I just don't think that you can find a jury of 12 people without finding, 2, 3, hell, maybe even 4 persons who are just stern supporters of Trump and they have their mind made up a certain way. The other thing, too, I think people have to take into account, and this should have no bearing on the determination of guilt or innocence, but let's just keep it a buck. Let's think about what we're dealing with right here. We're talking about real life. Let's say former President Trump was found guilty, and the jurors who decided that their information gets out to the public. And next thing you know, they have a shitload of people protesting at their door, marching, threats, the whole nine. Like, I think there's several ways that a juror could be inclined to think that President Trump is not guilty. One, because of the credibility of Michael Cohen, they think that the overall evidence is just weak. Two, the political nexus, when you look at the timing of when the indictment was presented to, when the charges were presented to a grand jury for indictment, they sat on this for a long time and it just makes it look political, which is going to make people look at it with a little bit of skepticism. So, I mean, it's just so many reasons. So I would be shocked personally if a guilty verdict comes from this. If a guilty verdict does come from this, I know for a fact with 100% certainty, Trump isn't going to nobody's state prison. I seriously doubt that that would happen. I think it would be some type of unsupervised probation. I think that President Trump would immediately file a notice of appeal, and he would re-argue his case during the course of an appeal. Um, that's just my take on it. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. Hey, I know, I don't want to sound like a Trump fanboy. I just don't feel confident. I think in these United States, it's going to be hard to find a juror of 12 persons who would actually give you a guilty verdict on former President Trump, especially when you got a sleaze bag like Michael Cohen, understand, especially when there could be a good argument, even though this has nothing to do with the facts, but the jurors are taking in information from everywhere, no matter what the hell the judge said. Don't look at outside news on this case, all these things. All that is irrelevant. But because these jurors are looking at TikTok, they're doing things when they get home. They're scrolling through TikTok, seeing arguments, seeing President Trump's statements. So it's going to be interesting. I just don't think they're going to get 12 people to say guilty. That's my personal opinion. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. And if you're watching this video and you enjoyed this content, check out what's going to be on the screen. There's going to be more content related to finances and attorney reactions. Peace.